What is going on, guys? It is James back with another episode of 80/20. And today I have someone that I'm very excited for everyone to meet, and someone that I think is going to bring and drop some game on all of your faces. This is Nathan Teter. He is a physical therapist out in, where are you at now? Cumming?
Cumming. Yes, sir.
Cool, cool. Yeah, and he's actually someone we'll kind of go into probably a little bit. We'll touch on how we met and how we came across one another. But yeah, I first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me.
Cool, cool. So let's start with kind of your story, right? You're a physical therapist. How did you get where you're at right now? And maybe walk it back to all the way back to sports in high school or before that if you want to.
Absolutely. It's kind of a prototypical physical therapist story. I grew up playing a bunch of sports, went through my trials and tribulations with injuries through that time. I played high school football, college football, University of West Georgia. And through that span, I had my fair share of different physical therapy for different type of injuries. What piqued kind of my interest in the field was the vast difference between each place I would go. There would be, I would go to some places that were just your run of the mill, let's do these 4 sets of straight leg raises and you're out of here, put some ice on it. And then go to somebody who, did some manual therapy, really had a much more interpersonal relationship with me and really trying to find to get to the bottom of my injury. And I always responded so much better to that type. And it really kind of opened my eyes to, what you were able to do by just changing the way that people are being treated. So getting into college, I really didn't even figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I liked the field, but I wasn't sure of it. I wasn't somebody that knew I wanted to be a physical therapist when I was a junior in high school. I started, I guess, going into my senior year of college, I figured it out and said, oh, wow, I'm going to do a little bit more studying if I'm going to try to get this GPA right. I've got to kind of buckle it down if I want to do this. And then the same thing with, because I didn't do it early, I didn't have a whole lot of experience in shadowing hours and everything like that. So I was kind of a rat race for the next 2 years trying to get my resume built up to start applying to physical therapy school.
Yeah. So you did you take time after, did you take like some gap time or were you?
You could call that. I still had, because I figured out I wanted to do it so late in my college career. I still had some prerequisite courses that I needed to take in order to get into physical therapy. So after I graduated from West Georgia, moved home for 6 months, started at Georgia Perimeter for, I think, for a semester to knock out the remaining prerequisites I needed, and then started applying. That was a pretty wild process for people not familiar with it. You're humbled very quickly.
Yeah, when you say wild, like how many applications did you put in? How many denials did you get? Like, did you get smacked in the face? Was that like maybe the most rejections you faced?
1,000% up to that point in my life. That was the most rejection. It was very humbling. I put out about 45 applications, and these things would range. Some of these things you have to pay $300 an application for some private schools. So it wasn't like you could just, put you had one sheet of paper with all of your achievements on there that you're sending out. Every single one was specifically, you had to apply specifically to that university.
Yeah.
And I think at the first time I did it, I had 3 schools contact me. After that, only one offered me for that upcoming school year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that journey, that was pretty crazy too, because I'd always been interested in the University of St. Augustine I really liked that because they had a very heavy manual therapy basis. And I attributed a lot of my success through my recovering through my injuries to manual therapy. So I'd always kind of I really wanted to go there. But at the time, the Florida campus, which was obviously closest to me, did not have any openings for the current semester. But I got a call from the California campus and said, hey, we actually just had some people drop out. If you can make it happen, then if you want to come out here in 2 months, we'll start here and then you can transfer to Florida whenever you want. So I said, you know what, let's do it. Let's get on the road.
Shoot. So you went to California first?
Yes, sir. I was out there for my entire first year.
Oh, wow. What part of California is that?
San Marcos, so Southern California, about it's kind of in between San Diego and Orange County, Laguna Beach area.
You like it out there? Not so much.
Loved it temporarily. After being out there for a while, I knew I could never live out there, but
Yeah.
it was, I mean, you can't beat, I mean, for the obvious reasons everybody likes to stay out there and will deal with the taxes to be out there. The weather's unbelievable. It's a little bit more lax of a lifestyle. There's not too much, not too many uptight people out there. And it's just, I mean, the amount of things that you're able to do, especially in that Southern California, you could be in the desert or on the beach in like a matter of 2 or 3 hours. Just a lot of activities that you can do, a lot of things to do.
Yeah. Well, knowing a little bit more about you, I don't think that you'd ever live in California again. If I had to guess, I think
no, I'm a mountain man.
Yeah, I think you'd, big beard. You might be somewhere else in the States if you're here. I want to kind of pull on. You said manual therapy. Can you run down the delineation between manual therapy and what's traditional physical therapy? Because I don't know that everyone knows, and I don't even know that I necessarily know.
Yeah, so I mean, manual therapy essentially can get. I mean, it's very, very. They outline it as very, very basic. It's essentially your therapist is going to heal you through touch. There are certain techniques and there are certain things that we can do to eliminate pain, to provide increased healing, whether that be Graston, whether that be cupping, whether that be just soft tissue massage, trigger point release. There's a lot of different methods that we can utilize to really help somebody recover. That is not just the traditional aspect of, all right, if something's injured, we need to make sure that we are giving it time off. We need to make sure that it's healing properly. We need to facilitate that healing, which almost always requires some form of strengthening, some type of support around an injury. And then we have to, part of it should be going into injury prevention from there. That should be kind of the last step. Once this person is, feeling better, they've gotten through this injury, we need to try to do everything we can to make it not happen again. And it's unfortunate that there are a lot of universities still out there that when physical therapists get out of school and they go to work at a clinic, they honestly have very rarely ever touched a patient. It's all through, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do these stretches. We're going to do these exercises. We're going to get on the bike. We're going to throw some ice on this. They have no knowledge of like what your hands can actually do. And it's not just treating, it's figuring out an injury. Your hands can get very knowledgeable at what something feels like and what something is. When an injury is there, injury is present, you can feel that. And it takes time. It takes a lot of practice, but having that tool, I believe, really, really enhances your patient's chances of improving properly and in the quickest manner possible.
Yeah, when you said some word that started with a G, Graston or Graxton. What is that?
Most people know it as scraping, where they're you've got a big metal tool that you're.
Okay,
that's right.
Okay, and what is that necessarily doing? Is that like breaking up fascia? Or like what's the?
So that's the common misconception is that it is breaking up scar tissue. There's not really anything that breaks up scar tissue. Like what it really does with Graston is you have three. I mean, you've got a layer of skin, you've got fascia, you've got muscle. Okay, a lot of times with an injury, with tightness, all of those layers get compressed. Okay, and when they're compressed, blood flow is inhibited to that area. We know that we've got to have blood in an area in order to heal. So what Graston does, it can help loosen tissue. Okay, it can help separate those adhesions where the fascia is kind of bound down to the muscle or the skin is bound down to the fascia to allow more blood flow to get into an area and help you.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. As a physical therapist, how often do you have these things done to you?
Quite often, honestly. I mean, obviously there was a lot when I was in school and doing, labs where you're working with, my classmates, and you're always wanting to test things out on yourself because I mean, when somebody teaches about it and they're telling you everything, it's the greatest thing in the world. You're like, holy cow, let's try this. There's some things that work, and then there's some things you're like, not a huge fan of that. But I mean, for me, Graston's kind of an as needed basis. I'm not somebody that goes in and is like, all right, if I'm going to do legs today, I've got to hit this Graston before I go in there.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So with those more hands-on techniques, what do you think the biggest misconception is, just from an actual practitioner standpoint, with people that are going to PT?
Well, so are you asking why it's not like manual therapy is not utilized more?
Yeah, like you, it sounds like you're saying that, against the normative standards here, that manual therapy is a way to go, but why don't more practices do that, nor is it promoted?
Two reasons, in my opinion. The first has to do with the problem that is, I mean, really in all of academia right now, with the people that are teaching you this stuff are much older than the information that's coming out. Okay. A lot of them like to stay in their old ways, rooted in their old ways. They like to do, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. They like to stick with what they know works. And they're not necessarily, if they think that they can improve something with one measure, why do they need to go and learn something else or teach something else? That's one problem, that the people, it's relatively new to the world of therapy, but the people that are teaching it, a lot of them did not do it for their entire careers. That's one part. The second part is, and this has a kind of negative impact, in my opinion, on therapy in general, is the abundance of research that comes out. And you have a research study that comes out and says, all right, we compared manual therapy to standard therapeutic exercise. And we found that there was no difference in, outcomes between these two groups of patients. The problem with that is that the variables that they're using, and I mean, it's just everything with research, it depends on who's conducting that study, what their goal is, because you can make research studies kind of show what you want them to show. And the funny thing is, there's not a huge amount of evidence out there that says manual therapy absolutely 100% works. But if you go and ask, 100 people that have received manual therapy and traditional, just, exercise, I would say 80 to 90% of those would say that they improved more because of the manual therapy aspect than if they would have just had therapeutic exercise. So there's a huge difference and divide in kind of what our research shows and what our actual patients are experiencing.
I think that's fair. And you said that, the manual therapy direction is kind of what kind of drew you into PT in the first place, isn't it? Like how much that helped.
It really intrigued. Yeah. That I was already wanting to kind of specialize in manual therapy. And then to have that mindset before even starting the information, it's just like anything. When you're excited about learning something new, you're going to learn it a lot better than, like, I can tell you right now, my knowledge on manual therapy is a heck of a lot better than my knowledge on cardiopulmonary. There's with the stuff that you're very, very much interested in, you retain a lot more of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. What's your injury journey looked like? Like how is PT? Like, let's start as far back as you want there. How is PT? How is potentially chiro been a part of that? How has massage therapy? Like, what does that look like for you, your healing process in relation to the world of PT and some other modalities?
Yeah. So we'll be here all night if we go into everything, but
just the big ones. Just hit the big ones.
My big ones were knee injuries, and I've had, dealing with sports, whether that be lifting in the weight room for sports or on the field injuries. I've had 6 different surgeries from the time I was a freshman in high school to the end of my senior year in college. My two most impactful injuries were both ACL tears, ACL, MCL, and meniscus, both on the same knee. One senior year of high school, one senior year of college. And that between those two injuries, and then I had a shoulder injury earlier on in high school. The difference between those three types of therapy that I received was astronomical. Okay. So I've had when my therapy on my shoulder in high school, I mean, it was literally, I walked into a clinic, they had me sit down on an exercise bike, and I didn't have anything wrong with my legs, sitting on an exercise bike, because that therapist needed to see two more patients that were in there. Then I get done with that, they say, all right, I'm going to move your arm around for 5 minutes, and all right, now let's start doing some exercises. And that was the conclusion of it. And for 6 or 7 weeks, I had the same exact exercises. We may up the reps a little bit, but there was no programming whatsoever. And it took a lot on my own part of, I was already intrigued in weight training and anatomy and everything in general. So it was a lot of kind of research on my end and doing things outside of my physical therapy that allowed me to recover from that in a timely fashion. You fast forward, you compare that to my last ACL injury in college that ended my career. I actually went to at the time was the Falcons orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Globally. And I was at his rehab facility, and the difference in approach was just unbelievable. I remember he was in the second I got out of surgery. I remember waking up, and they rolled me into the clinic, the physical therapy clinic. They helped me up. I still had an IV on. They helped me up and got me on an exercise bike. And they said, you're going to sit on this exercise bike until you get a full revolution on your knee. And we're going to time how long it takes, because Brian Finneran has the record right now, and we want to see if you can beat that. So just off the bat, I mean, that's the difference it's a massive difference in the just philosophy of therapies. And that's where I got a ton of interest in manual therapy. I had a physical therapist she was actually from South Africa, but she was she was manual therapy certified, specialized in that. And comparing that to my other ACL surgery in high school, it was just a completely different process. I was more involved in it because I felt like she was more involved in it. And it just helped. It was psychologically, physically, my recovery was better. It was just that's what really sparked my journey to go into physical therapy school. I guess that was the last ignition. Yeah. And as far as my other modalities that I do, man, I'm kind of a freak when it comes to, like, I sometimes overanalyze what's going on. Because I know some of this stuff, it just bothers me, and it gets in my head. I'm like, if I've got a little bit of an issue going on in my back, and I'm trying to do, arms that day in the gym, I can't stop thinking about my back. I'm like, all right, what is this? What muscle could this be that is aggravating me? What do I need to do to, try to fix this? But I think all of the modality, all of the specialties when it comes to health and fitness and just, recovery and just increased performance, I think you have to include everything in there. And I think there's a different amount of the pie. I don't think there's one, 25% here, 25% here, 25% here. I think the individual, it really depends on that individual with what's going to work for them. But I think there's definitely a use for massage, manual therapy, physical therapy, exercise programming, chiropractic. I think everything needs to be utilized in order for you to be elite.
Yeah, you didn't
and
say
it's what you see.
You didn't say MDs. Where are they?
No, you don't want to hear me on that.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. They are. It's the same thing, man. There's a huge difference in what you're going to get from your MD. And it's troubling that, you're going to go to an orthopedic specialist, 99% of the time, it's going to be pretty good. Okay. They've got a very solid understanding of what's going on with the anatomy and what's going on with your injury. What gets me is the problem we still have somewhat in most states with direct access. We go to school for 4 years now, 3 or 4 years, to get a physical therapy degree. We learn exclusively on anatomy, insertions, muscle actions, what these things are doing. But we're still only able to see a patient for 8 visits before they have to get a note from an MD. When they can go to a a general, they can go to a urgent care, okay, and go and sit down with a doctor that's 83 years old, that probably had 15 hours of his coursework in orthopedics and anatomy, but they can go to him as long as they want. And he's considered a specialist when if the patient rolled their ankle and asked them, what ligament do you think this is? They wouldn't know where to start.
Yeah. So it seems like there might be some dissonance there. There might be some things that everyone could benefit from changing, huh?
You struck a nerve on that one.
Yeah, no, I can see it. You started direct eye contact. You've never done that with me before. So here we are. No, that totally makes sense. So where is where's Dr. Nathan going? Where like what's your goal? What do you want to do with not only your knowledge, but the experience that you've had and your positive experiences and your negative experiences? Like where's Nathan and where's Apex going? Like what are you trying to do?
Yeah. In order to answer that, I'm gonna have to kind of dive into the insurance based therapy or medical treatment versus cash based. So essentially, I got out of school. My primary, I really loved athletics. That's what I came from. That's what I enjoyed treating. So that's what I kind of wanted to be involved with. I got in with a clinic that saw a lot of athletes. We were probably either 50-50 or 60-40. We had contracts with a lot of different schools in the area, high schools. So I loved it. As I got into it, though, I started realizing how handcuffed physical therapists are in what we would consider kind of a big box physical therapy company because of the different things we have to do due to insurance. For example, what kind of started this off was in the last 15, 20 years, reimbursement rates from insurance companies to physical therapy clinics has decreased by 3 times. Okay. What that does is that means instead of you needing to see, 7 patients a day to fill your quota, you're now seeing 21 to keep that same margin for your clinic to stay afloat, essentially. When that starts happening, you're not able to give the patient their best, the best care that they deserve. And that the clinic that I worked for was actually, it was a private, it's not even considered a big box, but they still took insurance. They're much better than most of these clinics. I'm not going to go into any names, but most of these clinics that you drive by a strip mall and you see, you can see 4 of the same exact PT brand, in a trip, 20 minutes down the road. Those are the clinics I'm talking about. Those, it's not even, I considered it kind of awful when I was having to see 18 to 20 patients a day. It's not unheard of for some of those therapists to see 35 to 40 patients in one day. When you're doing that, you have to have 3 or 4 patients in at a time of every hour. And you just can't provide the type of care that somebody needs individually because of that. That's what really led me out of the traditional model. I started hearing about some of these cash-based physical therapy companies upcoming where you got to just do one-on-one treatment. You and that patient there, they have your undivided attention. You're able to really figure out what's going on. And you're not having to see, 20, 25 patients a day, 5 days a week. You're able to see 6, 7 patients a day. When you throw that in there, you're, as a physical therapist, the burnout that you would experience elsewhere is just not there. You get to really connect with these patients. You develop much closer relationships and bonds with this person, and you start to understand them better. And in turn, that helps them get better quicker. You're able to really think about, all right, what is going on here? Okay. You're able to really detail this. When you have 4 patients, I don't care how good of a multitasker you are. When you have 4 patients in the clinic at once, you're not giving one of those your individual attention. You're not able to think in depth, which is required a lot of the time. It's physical therapy is a roller coaster, man. You can have 4 good, your patients going up, 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 and then they drop, just out of nowhere. They've got pain that you can't figure out. it takes time to figure out and kind of problem solve what's going on there. And that's time that you don't have when you're working with a traditional insurance company. So that's what kind of sparked my interest. I was like, this is what I want. I love this field. I love what I do, but I don't like being handicapped with my ability. And I want to have more time with a patient. I don't want to have to see 30 patients a day every single day. Those were two of the huge things for me because it allowed me to be a better therapist. And when you throw those into the equation, your typical patient will go to a big box physical therapy clinic. They've got a referral from a physician that says, I need you to go here 3 times a week for 6 to 8 weeks. We have figured out, and why cash-based physical therapy is just booming right now, is because we figured out that we don't need 6 to 8 weeks. We don't need to see this person 3 times a week. We need to see this patient 1 to 2 times a week for maybe 7 total treatments, maybe half the time that they come here. If you do your job and you are able to spend enough time figuring out what's going on and educating them on how to improve that, they don't need to spend that amount of time. It directly affects their recovery. It affects your ability to function as a therapist. It's a win-win in all directions. So that's what got me hooked. And I said, you know what? I don't care right now. At some point I'm going to venture off and I'm starting my own. I'm going to do the thing. Cash-based physical therapy. I knew in order to do that, I wasn't willing to completely dive all in. So I knew I could not do that seeing 20 patients at my old company. Mm-hmm. So I had to venture out into a field that was not necessarily like one of my preferred. I went into the assisted living field where my hours were much better. I had a lot more free time. And the pay was actually better in that field because you don't have as many people that are, die hard to go into that. That allowed me to get my start up. That allowed me an extra, 6-7 hours a week to put in to building my business while not risking a whole lot of income. That was great. That's a very rare thing in today starting out. It's a positive to have kind of a fallback. And there's multiple different avenues for physical therapists to do this, but that was what was nice and led me to kind of the place I am today. Now I'm 100% Apex Physical Therapy, not doing anything else. And I'm able to put my full attention on building my business.
Yeah. So about how long were you in assisted living?
I was there about 8 months. Let's see. Yeah, 8 months. And I started at least a framework for my cash-based business as soon as I was hired, because that was the plan the whole time. I needed this to transition me to full-time. I needed that time period, still getting some income to build my own and build up my brand.
Yeah. So it's, the shift now over to where you're at, where you're 100% for you. That's been a better shift, getting out of the assisted living, out of the turn and burn, like we're talking. That's kind of what we're talking about, right? With the facilities. Same thing with chiro offices and all kinds of other doctors' offices where you have 15 people in the waiting room at once all day, every day, and nothing really changes there. You've got a few minutes and then we're on to the next. Yeah.
And that's one of the issues is that and there's not necessarily a platform for it to change because they don't need to. These type of clinics, they don't care if you don't like the treatment. They really don't care if you show up again because they've got contracts with hospitals and surgeons where they're going to get 4 new hip patients tomorrow. They don't need you. They want your one time. And they really don't have time to think about it or care about it.
Yeah.
Whereas when you are doing it on your own and when you're a cash patient, when you're seeing, you're grinding to get 5 or 6 patients a day, you are invested. That's directly affecting your quality of life. So you're going to do what you got to do to make this person feel that they are getting the best care that they deserve. And to try to, it's a competition. You want to see how fast and how well they can get in the shortest amount of time. It's a huge difference between those two mindsets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, I think you would love my buddy Andy. Same way, Doctor of Chiropractic, the exact same thing. Like, how fast can we get you better so that you never have to see me again? Or you only see me if you want to because you want to progress faster. That's it.
You
Get you
know,
in and get you back on your own. So you have autonomy, and you can fire me if you want, kind of thing.
see, cool, man. It's teaching these people how to do a lot of this stuff on their own to
Yeah.
where they don't have to come, really educating them on what is needed and how they can do different things to impact their life. Because you don't like seeing these people like this. You don't want to be in that situation. Why not share that with, everybody that you're treating?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So what is the Nathan Teter difference? Okay. Like if you go to a regular facility, and you don't have to give me any trade secrets, but like maybe just broad strokes. If you go to a regular facility and I have 3 or 4 of the names in my head because I've attended there before, right? You get an exercise sheet, right? You get handed a list like, hey, we're going to do these things. Hey, you're going to be with me here. Love to see it. Yeah, let me see how you move. Cool. You don't move great. Here's the exercises, do them for the next 45 minutes. All right. If someone walks into Apex, what do they get that is different than that?
And I would say one of the biggest differences is I'm very big on a full step back, look at the entire issue at hand. Okay. It's very easy to get caught up, especially when you're crunched for time. It's very easy to get caught up on where this patient is saying that they have a problem. Okay. They say, oh, I've got pain in the front of my shoulder. It's been here for 4 months. You directly go to the common thing is bicep tendonitis, could be a partial rotator cuff tear, anything, labrum tear. Okay. That's where your mind goes if you're in that kind of mindset, because you don't have the time to do the testing. You don't have time to go through a full biomechanic review of all of their systems. A lot of the times, that injury that's occurring is because of something else that is out of whack. Okay. The big thing at Apex is if you have a knee problem, I'm not even looking at your knee until I check out your hips, your ankle, even even up to your torso. There's so much more that you need to take into account. And then you start to narrow that down. Okay. You can find if somebody's got, right-sided knee pain, you can quick and do a test on their glute med, and they just drop right off the floor, and their other one is strong as can be. That can tell you right there. It's like, boom, that's what I need to have on my radar. This is an abnormality that directly affects this body part. But if I went to the knee and was testing around for 3 or 4, 5 treatment sessions, we'd be just puzzled trying to figure out what's going on because you're not looking in the right area. That's one of my kind of main things. And that's what I hear from my patients. They're like, I've never had somebody ask me to do a squat and film it in slow motion before. I've never had somebody, I'm a CrossFit athlete, and I've never had somebody, want me to do a jerk in the evaluation or an overhead press and film it and look at it.
See if we're dipping, like see what's happening. Is our head getting caught back? Like what
That's
have
right.
you there? Yeah.
And it's part of the problem if you don't do that. And a lot of the reason that people aren't doing that, they were taught it in school, but they don't have time in a traditional clinic. If you're seeing 4 patients an hour, you've got, you may have 10 to 15 minutes to do an evaluation. I mean, my evaluation itself without the treatment typically takes 45 minutes to an hour. And that's on virtually anything. Now, there are some injuries that come in and it's like, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on before we do anything. I'm still doing those tests because things will pop out at you that you did not expect. And it's wild when you start to treat, instead of looking at the exact injury, instead of narrowing your mindset down to exactly what's wrong, if you start to treat the imbalances that you find elsewhere in the body, it's amazing the relief and the progress that you can make in the actual injured part.
Yeah, it's almost like you take a more holistic approach. You're going to give someone longevity rather than just a quick fix. Not just a Band-Aid. Like we're going to get you back on the street doing your thing.
That's right.
Yeah. What role does strength training and prehab rehab, bulletproofing, knees over toes, kettlebell windmills, all those kind of things, like what places that have at Apex?
It's massive. I know I went on a tangent about manual therapy earlier, and it's definitely needs to be utilized with all physical therapists, in my opinion. But therapeutic exercise is the bread and butter. Most injuries have to do with an imbalance, and you're not going to correct that without strengthening the proper musculature around there. The difficult part is figuring out how and where to strengthen without aggravating or making something worse. That's where the kind of skilled physical therapy comes into this. That's where, even when you get out of physical therapy, that's where there needs to be a contact between your physical therapist and your athletic or your trainer. Okay. Because there needs to be that continuity between, to fully understand what's going on.
Yeah. So most of your clients, when they come in, you give them some sort of protocol, like prehab, rehab outside with maybe even low weights, or you're talking to trainers, or you're having those kind of conversations, or are you pretty much giving them something, they're being empowered on their own, or are you doing that communication?
So generally how kind of my session works, on the evaluation, we're doing pretty long evaluation process. Then it usually goes directly into manual therapy. Okay. I'm going to figure out what's tight, what's loose, what needs to be worked on. Okay. What can make this patient feel good? What can relieve pain temporarily? I know it may not, relieve their pain indefinitely, but if it allows me to do the therapeutic exercise that I need to do this session, it gives me a window to do that, then it's worth it. A lot of the issue is a lot of clinicians, especially young clinicians that are fresh out of school, they are very, very scared of adding weight. Okay. At the end of there always needs to be an introductory, a build-up phase. Okay. But at the end of the day, that injury is not going to be improved until you are loading the joint or loading the muscle. That's the only way for muscle growth. That's proven time and time again. For actual growth and strength gains, that muscle has to be loaded at 75 to 95%. You're not going to improve a elbow tendonitis by doing bicep curls with 3-pound dumbbells. And you see it all the time in clinics. You see it on YouTube. You type in physical therapy for blank, blank, blank.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff. Yes, you want to do that for the neuromuscular control, seeing how the patient responds. But as soon as they start responding, you've got to start progressing. You've got to start programming that. And at the end of the day, once they start to get strong, that's when the problem gets fixed.
Yeah. On that note, what do you think about squat U? What do you think about knees over toes?
Love both of them. I usually tell my patients this because I actually have a lot of patients ask me about the knee over the toe guy. I love his concept. And I think it's incredible. But what I tell them is I'm about 80-20. That he's like 150% in. I'm like 80-20. I think and it's really dependent on genetics too. You can't just go and start doing sissy squats with your knees 8 inches over your toes with 225 pounds on the bar and expect your knees to feel better. There's a huge acclimation phase. But the reason that it all makes sense, we were told for so long, do not let your knee travel over your toes with squats, with lunges, with everything you do. The reason that they said that is because there is an increased load on that patella, on your kneecap, okay, on that joint. There's an increased load there that can cause pain. The problem is our daily functional activities require that. Every time you go and take a step down a stair, you cannot do it without your knee traveling over your toe. So we have to have some type of, acclimation to that. Your knee has to be ready to do that. And that, in my opinion, that's a lot of why it works so well. Because in our everyday life, our knee is traveling over our toe all of the time. And if you are acclimated to that, if you're training in that, it's going to be no issue for you. And that's not going to be a cause of pain. It's the same thing with the squat guy. It's an awesome site if you guys don't follow them. For rehab, for everything, their stuff is incredible. But my main thing was squats. Now, everybody asked me, they're like, what do you think? Do you like deep squats or do you like 90 degrees? I tell all of my patients, it really depends for your exact person. Okay. That individual is going to tell you, I can look at somebody, I can tell them straight up, you don't need to squat to full depth. If you're starting to have a butt wink and uncontrolled flexion in that lumbar spine, that's bad. I don't care what strength coach tells you, that's not a full rep until your butt winks. That's not good. But if you're able to get to that full depth with no pain and no wink, then that's perfectly fine. It's good. There's actually a little bit more correlation with quad and hamstring activation when you go to that full depth. The thing is, people think it's a lot more than it is. You get virtually the same amount of torque and strength from your quads and hamstrings going to 90 degrees than you do going all the way down.
Ass to grass.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, maybe there's a case for us not being absolutists, right, in health and wellness, because I think, some people are like, hey, if you don't squat all the way down, you're fucking up. If you
that's right.
You have to squat to 90 or you're going to hurt yourself. If your knees ever travel over your toes, you're screwed. Your knees have to travel over your toes and everything. Like, I don't know about that. I think it depends might be a better,
it is.
assignment.
And it all comes from, I think, the authoritative figures that say this, they want to sound to their clients or their patients, they want to sound like they know for fact that this is the way. Okay. They don't want to admit that there's some skepticism there, or there's some, it really depends. It validates them. Okay. And you see it. What's the huge problem is in like high school sports. Some of these weight training coaches, they are, they're really, really focused on being dominant and being the authoritative figure, and what my way is it. And they are not, a lot of the times they're not qualified for that. Yeah. And you get these people in bad habits. I remember when I was in high school, our squat maxes would not count unless we saw the butt wink. And that's horrible. Now knowing what we know about what happens there and the low lumbar spine flexion when it's loaded, that's a horrible thing. And you're teaching these kids at a very, very young, age, at the very beginning of their exercise journey. You're teaching these principles that are just flat out wrong. It's not that there's even any skepticism to it.
Yeah. No, I remember my weight training coach at McIntosh High School. I tell you what, my squat clean looked like a hip thrust to the moon plus a reverse curl. And then even then, elbows never came through. So, good night. I don't think I ever broke 200 pounds when I was in high school. Our form was just asinine, right? Nobody was USA weightlifting. Nobody didn't have credentials other than like, hey, I'll take 40 grand a year and I'll come in because I want to coach football because I didn't make it to the league. I'm going to go. Great people, not really that qualified. Like, your ass is not a dump truck. You shouldn't be telling me how to squat.
Yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, we could have an entire podcast on this. And it is a huge, huge problem, because they are not. To get a high school weight training, to get a job in high school weight training, it's scary. Most people don't know how easy that would be for some people. And it is. And now I'm not saying that there are a lot of high school weight training coaches that are phenomenal, that would outperform college weight training coaches. I'm just saying that there is the instance of ones that gets, through the cracks, are able to get in there, and they have a huge impression on, as you're going through puberty, as you are growing, as you are learning exercise, they have a huge impression on that for your first real 4 years of exercise. And a lot of it's hard to break.
Yeah. It was hard to break for me with the knees over toes. It was hard to break for me with all of the, like, any kind of Olympic movements. And we didn't snatch, we clean and jerk, but our clean and jerk really looked like a head back, like trying to do an overhead press out here. Like we're marching, like I look at stuff now and it's laughable what our form will look like and what we were doing day in, day out. And probably the amount of people that got injured because of it.
Yeah. It's unbelievable there's 100 problems that go and coincide with this. You have, in a lot of high school weight training classes, you have freshmen, a 14-year-old freshman in there with a grown man that is 18 years old as a senior. And you're in there with a weight training coach trying to tell you, we're going for maxes today. We want to see how strong you can be, when these kids do not have the form. And just to say, this 14-year-old that looks up to this, 18-year-old man, he's going to be trying his damnedest to get that same weight or to follow in those footsteps, when in reality, they should be focusing on, for their first 2 years, really focusing on form, technique, those are the things that are going to set a foundation for you to blow by the rest of everybody else. If there was a study that showed, kids that were held back from doing what their high school weight training coach kind of programmed them, and they had an actual, they had a physical therapist or they had a knowledgeable trainer teaching them how to do this and really creating a foundation, without a doubt, they excel past everybody else.
Yeah. That longevity game, I mean, it starts to compound at a point where you're past the understanding of movement patterns. And now we're progressing into progressive overload because we have all of the foundation that if it's not interrupted, you can go very far, very fast in the grand scheme. If you lengthen the time horizon in 6 years, you can go way further than you can rolling with some of these high school coaches and not even make it through college. You get injured freshman year of college, and here we go. You picked your school based on where you're going to play football. Like,
bingo. That's it,
guys.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. So I want to pull out something. You said that when I was talking about people having dump truck asses, if you don't have that, you shouldn't be squatting. What do you think the role of your athletic trainer, your PT, your chiro, your MD, your DO, your PA, your NP, whatever the hell? What do you think the responsibility of them is to practice? Like, where do you think the responsibility lies for them to practice what they preach?
I'm a very, very strong believer in that. Okay. And that's one thing. And I'll get a lot of criticism on that. I mean, it can be argued that, you can be very, very knowledgeable and not necessarily partake in those actions. Okay. If you're not trying to be a football player or, a college athlete, that was never your thing, but you have a passion for helping others, that's one that can be argued. In my opinion, you were going to find about 2 of those to every 10 of the others. Okay. The guys that look the part is what I call it. In the same way that you don't want your cardiologist to be, an alcoholic that smokes a pack of cigarettes a day. If you're, you want to go to Clemson or Georgia on a football scholarship and you have an injury, do you want your PT to have, 6-inch arms or, never played sports in their life? I know I wouldn't. And I've actually walked out of PT clinics because of that, because there's not it's not necessarily that they don't know how to, but they don't understand what's in your head. They don't understand kind of the drive that you have, the importance of getting back on the field, the importance of getting healthy. A lot of times they're not able to because they haven't experienced it before. It's just, the same concept with the, personal trainer. If, you got a out of shape personal trainer that doesn't practice what they preach, are you going to believe them when they say, yeah, this is the best way? Well, how do you know it's the best way? Did you read it in a study that may have been funded by somebody that may have, wanted that study to say something? That's the thing. That's a lot of these people, and they found their stuff I believe there has to be a balance between research and honestly gym bro. They're like, oh, don't listen to a gym bro, don't listen, he doesn't know anything, he just, there's a lot that can be said from trial and error, and people respond differently to different things. Not to say that, what worked for Ronnie Coleman to get to his size would work for everybody, but at least we know that what he did worked.
You can look at him. You can look at him up through his prime and everything else. And you listen to him on podcasts of what he was taking, what he was doing, how he was training. Like, look, it worked for him. You can't say it didn't work for him for what he was trying to do. I would say that's fair. The only thing there in my mind is, like, do you expect your physical therapist to be able to back squat 500 pounds?
Absolutely you personally? No. Mine's really, and you don't even have to, I want you to be healthy is my thing. That's what I'm talking about, practicing what you preach.
Like holistically.
You're in a profession about health and wellness that revolves solely on that. If you're not healthy yourself, what does that tell your client? What does that tell your patient? Like, to me, it's just unjust. Like, you're a perpetrator. Like, you're not real.
Yeah. No, I get that. I can definitely resonate with that. A little bit of a stickier subject and a buzzword phrase is mental health. Can you talk a little bit about what it looks like as a practitioner in your field for mental health and compare or contrast when you're in a place that's kind of turn and burn to where you're at now?
It is unbelievable. We needed to have my wife on the podcast for this one, but that's a huge problem in physical
Mm-hmm.
therapy, and that's what leads to it has an extremely high burnout rate.
Mm-hmm.
There are a ton of physical therapists that have $100,000 in student loans that are no longer physical therapists 3 years after they graduate because of that exact thing. And the reason for that is most people get into a healthcare profession like physical therapy, like chiropractic, like a nurse, like a PA, because they want to, at the end of the day, they want to help people. Okay. You have satisfaction in that,
Mm-hmm.
in being able to help somebody. Okay. And that's what you learn kind of going all through school. You're like, you can't wait to get out there and do this. Then when you get in the real world, you figure out that every other, industry within the medical field, they're not really concerned about that. There's a lot that can be said about, there's a monetary value is a lot more important than emotional value or your mental health there. So what ends up happening at a churn and burn clinic, or even just one that you're seeing 15, 20, 25 patients at, you only have so much energy inside of you to put out on others. Okay. There's a strong, and I saw this firsthand. There's a strong difference between my first patient of the day, man. I'm ready to roll. Like, let's go. I have so much energy. I have so much, connection with that patient,
Mm-hmm.
and my 25th patient of the day. And it is very, very hard, if not impossible, to keep that energy for 3 years or 4 years straight, 5 days a week, 9, 10 hour days. You can't keep up with that. You only have so much energy per day. You only have so much that you can give out, that you end up getting drained. And I remember I would get home and my wife she tried to talk to me. She wanted to talk about how the day went. And it was horrible. I didn't even want to talk. I've been talking to people all day long and just getting emotional and
Mm-hmm.
trying my damnedest to get them better and to heal them or figure out a problem. By the time you do that for 10 hours straight, you're drained. You go home and you're just like, especially like me, I was going to the gym for an hour and a half after, the 10-hour work day. So I'm getting home. I was like, I don't want to talk. Like I've talked for all day long. And it was a strain, man. I mean, it was. I was drained, just mentally, physically, emotionally. You compare that to, somewhere where you have to see 5 to 7 patients a day.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to give every single one of those patients every bit of your emotion. You're able to dive into that. Um, you're able to really connect with that patient on a different level. And it's not even arguable than you are in like a big box physical therapy chain.
Yeah.
It's not even comparable.
Yeah. What what allowed you, what aided you, what helped you get through? I mean, the multiple years doing that from transition from turn and burn to then assisted living to now.
Man, honestly, lying to myself. I mean, thinking,
Oh,
this is hard on me because I'm new. And it's like, this will get easier. This stuff will come. And that's what everybody kept saying too. Like, oh yeah, it'll get easier. You'll start to get there. That's not the case. Yeah, you start to be able to streamline some stuff and as you are in the field, but that emotion and that draining from you, that's not something that changes. You only have so much of it to give a day. At the end of the day, you've only got so much, and you can't fake it. You really
yeah.
can't. And I believe that patients can see that, and like they're able to, and they're going to feed off of that energy too, just like anything else. It's like if you're lax, just slacking, dude, you're burned, you're gassed. Like that patient is going to feed off that energy.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I guess then over the long run, you have multiple weeks, multiple months, multiple years like that, you become kind of a shell of yourself as a practitioner, huh?
Now, without a doubt, you start questioning You're like, why did I do this? And I did this. I did it. I was like, I got into this because I wanted, I mean, I had a passion for helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to lose it. I mean, it really starts to, you're like, yeah, I still want to help people, but I'm not even able to do it. There was one turning point kind of in what was kind of my final be all. I was like, all right, I'm out. I was working with a pretty elite high school quarterback at the time. Just underwent a pretty major shoulder surgery and was trying to get back for his junior year, and being pretty heavily recruited. And this dude's been on just off the chain, wanting to get into some throwing. Man, he's like, I mean, he's just chomping at the bit to start throwing again. Okay. And I was holding him back 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And the day that I got clearance from his orthopedic surgeon for him to be cleared to throw, I had like 4 other patients in there in the facility that day that were just, they were on different exercises, doing different things. I couldn't physically go out there and spend what needed to be probably 10, 15, 20 minutes working on throwing mechanics to get back after a pretty significant shoulder surgery. And I just like saw the look on his face, and I was just like, I hate this. I'm being handcuffed. I know how to help this guy, and I know what I can do can help, but I'm being handcuffed and I'm not able to do the biggest part of what I love. And that's like seeing the improvement, seeing the joy on their face when somebody hasn't been able to throw and thinks that their, college football career's over. And then all of a sudden, boom, they hit that first pass. There's nothing that really can overcome that amount of joy and what you can get from that. That's what I love most about it. And I wasn't able to do it. And I was like, you know what? This is it.
Yeah. Was that last year, a year before, 2 years ago?
It was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Roughly 2 years ago.
Man, have you had any big success stories since you've broken off for Apex completely?
Yeah, I mean, I've had multiple success stories, but I mean, one comes to mind particularly well, and this is a kind of a good thing for people to hear about. Kind of, you need to seek different. When you have an injury, you don't just need to rely on one source of information. Okay, so I had one of my buddies from high school. He was a wrestler, tore his labrum, had, I think, 3 or 4 of his rotator cuff muscles torn to some extent, and a grade 3 AC joint separation. Okay. He went into the doctor. He came into me first, and he was like, "Hey man, I want to check this out." I start doing some tests on him. I start looking at some stuff. I was like, man, this is really not looking good. So I referred him in to, get some imaging, go to an orthopedic specialist to see what they thought. And I mean, 2 seconds after looking at the MRI, that was like 1,000%, you have to have surgery or you'll never function again. This arm will not function again. And for whatever reason, he came back and he told me that. And I was like, yeah, honestly, like after seeing this, I mean, I kind of agree. It would be very, very difficult to come back from this without having that. And he said, you know what? He's like, I want to go. And he's a personal trainer. So I knew that he had kind of the drive and he had the knowledge to do some of this stuff, but he was like, can we try like 12, 16 weeks? He's like, I'm functional right now. I'm just not able to do stuff overhead. He's like, can we try to do it conservatively and just see? I was like, dude, absolutely. Let's go for it. Let's see what you can do. And I was like, don't get discouraged if this doesn't happen. Cause I mean, you have a ton of stuff going on here. He's 2 years since we started, and he is overhead pressing 200 pounds. I mean, he's completely functional with his shoulder with no issue. And he has 3 rotator cuff muscles torn, an AC joint separation, and a torn labrum.
He's overhead pressing 200 pounds with all of that.
Yeah.
Dude, they're grown-ass men that try to overhead press 155 with no tears, and it doesn't happen.
Oh, absolutely, dude. He's an animal. I mean, it's unbelievable. But here's my thing. In me saying that, 95% of people would not be able to do that. 95% of people wouldn't be able to kind of put in the work and be knowledgeable enough to go through some of these movements and not make things worse, and have the mind muscle connection that he had to have to shift his stress from his rotator cuff to kind of his scapula and his back muscles to essentially stabilize that entire shoulder. But I mean, you were seeing it all the time. It's thankfully a lot of orthopedic surgeons are kind of jumping on board now with every time that there's a meniscus tear or every time that there's a rotator cuff tear, they're not saying, yep, let's go right into surgery. And that's been a thing for a long, long time. And time again, different research studies show, unless you have your entire rotator cuff torn, you need to try conservative therapy first, because it almost always has better outcomes associated with getting the repair. Now, that's not to say if you have one or two, torn rotator cuff tendons, that conservative therapy will 100% work for you. It really depends. But the thing is that people need to understand is you need to try it first.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe non-invasive before we do anything invasive.
Bingo.
Yeah, a holistic approach. And that seems to be the theme of the conversation, right? Chiro's not bad. PT is not bad. MDs aren't bad so long as they're not 400 pounds. Our RNs and everyone else, nobody's bad, right? It all depends on what you're going to use who and who you're going to interact with there. But maybe get more than one source of information, maybe see a modality and try it out, and try the non-invasive before the invasive.
Yeah, that's
cool.
It.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that person that you're talking about, that's probably your top 2% clientele. Talk to me about your bottom 2% clientele. The worst outcome patients that you have. What do they still see? Like, probably some pretty positive stuff, right?
Absolutely. And that's, I would say 99% of the time, regardless of what you come in with, you're going to see an improvement. Okay. Now there's that 1% these are the ones that keep you up at night. These are the ones that drive you absolutely crazy. The ones that you do everything and they're working hard and something still is not adding up. Something is still not working. Those drive you crazy, but all you can do, you just have to one of the biggest things is they have to have a positive outlook on it. You have to find a way. It doesn't matter how bad the situation, there has to be something that you give them to strive for, and that they have a positive outlook, that they have a glimmer of hope in order for it to have any effect. Okay. Now, I mean, that's the thing. You may see somebody that comes in for like severe back pain, and in 8 months, they still have back pain. But it's like, here's the difference. 8 months ago, this person wasn't able to lift up their newborn baby. They couldn't pick their baby up off the floor because their back hurt so much. And now their main complaint is they can't deadlift without their back tightening up or locking up. That's a huge win. Okay. You go from missing out on life experiences because of your pain to, now you're just limited in some fashion because of your pain. It's not always a 0 to 100 road.
Yeah. Okay. So quality of life overall definitely is going to improve if you stick with it and you got a good attitude.
And I mean, honestly, it's harder for therapists that are not necessarily in the orthopedic setting, that are more like, some of the inpatient or home health settings, where when you have a patient that has a progressive disease, where it's essentially, we know that this disease is getting worse, but we're doing what we can to just try to stalemate it. Okay. We're trying to keep them at this level that they're at right now for as long a period of time. That's very difficult. And I take my hat off for some of those therapists, because that would be very hard for me emotionally to know that this patient isn't necessarily going to ever improve. But you have to find a different lens to look through. You have to say, I want to keep this person walking for the next 3 years. And I know that if I'm not working with them or giving them my all, they will be in a wheelchair in 6 months. That's 2.5 more years of activities that they could do walking around for their life.
Yeah. Are you talking about palliative care? Like just quality of life, not necessarily.
Yeah. And I'm talking about, some of the just progressive disease, that, cerebral palsy, some things like that are just, no matter what you do, you're not necessarily ever going to get that patient, to running a marathon or, you're trying to impact their quality of life in the best positive way possible, even if that doesn't mean ever improving.
Yeah. No, I mean that's got to be difficult. It sounds like what being a public defender in the law is too. Like what,
Yes.
dude? There's only so
Yeah.
much you could do. You know,
Just without the money.
zero cash and all the cards stacked against you. You know,
That's
and a lot of
right.
people don't want to get better. So, definitely interesting there. Um, do you ever have people come in that are afraid of physical therapy, that are thrown off by who you are, or the way that you look? I mean, most people don't know what size you are of a human, but because you're sitting down. But what do you weigh right now?
250,
Okay, 250, and you're how tall?
close to 6'2", just
Okay,
under 6'2".
yeah. So we'll give you 6'1.5" for the day.
There,
Okay, we'll
bingo.
we'll keep you there. Do you ever have people that are intimidated or afraid of either the practice or you being a larger gentleman, not a tiny petite woman that's a PT?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I mean, I have people all the time. It's a lot of times it's people that have had either bad experiences
Mhm.
or no experience at all, and or just are intimidated. Somebody that doesn't necessarily look like me. Sometimes it throws them off. It's like I'm never going to, I just don't have the frame to look like this guy. Like it can kind of give that. I'm pretty good now at realizing that if they're, they have some animosity, or not animosity, but like, they're kind of standoffish. They're a little bit, I can sense that on people for the most part now. But what I usually do to counter that, I mean, I lay it out. There's a lot of education and just really letting people know what we're about to do, why we're about to do it, what this is going to do for them. And that's the reason that we're going to do it. And that's every time there's stuff in physical therapy that hurts. That's horrible. And yeah, there's, reason to be a little bit worried or scared because that there's pain that's going to happen. I mean, I remember after one of my knee surgeries, I started getting a lot of knee stiffness. I was not able to get my knee straight. And I remember them my therapist at the time, taking me into a back room and giving me a towel to bite on as they pushed my knee down because they didn't want to hear the other patients to hear me, scream and yelling when they were doing that. There's a lot of that goes in there. So it's not necessarily a bad thing when people are scared, but I think a lot of times you can negate that by getting a feel for the patient and just explaining what's going on. There's a whole lot of fear and just uneasiness, anxiety that comes along with dry needling if you've never had dry needling before. And it's pretty comical because most of the time, the ones that are the most worried about it, those are the ones that get what I call addicted to it. Yeah. It's like they realize, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And it provided so much relief that they're like, can I come back in 2 days and do this again? I'm like, are you hurting? They're like, no, I feel great right now. I'm like, oh, we don't really need to do it in 2 days then.
No, that definitely makes sense. It sounds like you're speaking to bedside manners. In my experience, this is anecdotal at best. This is not clinical. A lot of practitioners in health and wellness, from personal trainers all the way up to masters, doctorates, etc., of different practices. They got shitty bedside manners, man. What do you think is the cause of that, and then how do you as a practitioner fight that?
I think there's multiple reasons to why that is the case. Okay. I think one of the main ones is that you've been, especially as as a medical practitioner, whether that be a physical therapist, nurse practitioner, PA, doctor, your last few years of school and the knowledge that you were receiving when you were receiving a ton of knowledge was things that you made turn from very hard things to understand to very commonplace. Okay. So some of these words and some of these terms, they are very, very easy to understand for you now that you've been through school for so long. And you forget that the people that you're talking to or explaining things to don't have that same knowledge. They don't understand some of these things that make perfect sense to you. So, one of my one of my professors, when he was explaining things, he said, the best way to think of it is what you would say, what you were thinking is the best thing to say to the patient. You dumb it down 50%, and then you dumb that down 50%. That's really that's how you need to be explaining things to patients to help the bedside manner. That's one aspect right there. The second aspect, and this is the same thing. I don't know the studies or anything published out there about this, but there has been a huge shift, especially in physical. I'm going to speak on physical therapy, but we know it's common. It's in the same thing with the medical world too, or like medical doctor, MD, or medical school. There's been a huge shift in schools. They've been financially incentivized to get the highest score test takers to graduate from their programs, which does not ever or very rarely correlates to the best therapist. Okay. You can know everything there is to know about the human body, physical therapy, exercise. But if you can't develop a personal connection or relationship with your patient and they stop coming to you, then you're not servicing them. How good of a physical therapist are you if you can't get this person to understand what they need to do or get them motivated to heal? You're not. It doesn't matter what you score on tests. So, and the problem within physical therapy school is schools are incentivized to have their first board exams. All of this information is public on what the cohorts tested, what percent passed the board exams on their first time. There are a lot of great therapists out there, some of the best therapists in the world, that it took 4 times to pass the board exam. That's not because they're not smart. Some people aren't good at taking tests. Some people, it's just that's not the way they learn. But those are the people, a lot of the times, that are able to connect with patients and understand and can think outside the box. That's one of the problems with some of these people. Some people that are just, bookworm, they know everything. They're a walking encyclopedia computer. If something doesn't work for them in therapy, they just keep beating their head against the wall because they say, that's what my textbook said. That's what should happen. They can't jump out of that and look at the situation from a different lens like somebody else could. That I feel like that's one major problem, is that you're getting a lot of clinicians now that look like perfect clinicians on paper and on tests, but that does not translate to the clinic.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you say that, because I know a very solid personal trainer. His demographic is really like 40s and 50s women that aren't necessarily retired, but he didn't pass his CPT. And I mean, it's not one-to-one comparable by any stretch. Boards are not a CPT exam, but it's hilarious to me in hindsight because he didn't pass that first time. He's one of the best trainers that I know because he has the energy, he has the rapport, he has the connection with people. Who gives a damn if he can give you the medical name or he can give you the anatomically correct name for a certain tendon, right? He literally is like, all right, let's work on the front of your quad. Okay, let's look around the knee, right? Let's do. And it's funny because I would take someone like that in general practice, right? In gen pop, right? Maybe not for a specialty, like I hurt my shoulder. Okay. Like probably not going to go see him. But for general population, there's much more benefit in my mind. And I'd love your thoughts on that with someone that is better that way than necessarily can hit you eyes closed, point on someone's back and give you the anatomically correct names of everything on your back.
Without a doubt, man. I mean, the way I explain it, I've had different people ask me this before, and the way I explain it is like, think to your friend group. Okay.
No.
How many people that had, 4.0s through college? I mean, now there are some, I'm not completely ruling this out, but how many of those people had a pretty good, social interaction or social engagement in college? Okay. There's a huge component to physical therapy because of the communication factor. You've got this patient with you for 1 hour. Okay. Mm-hmm. If you spent your entire college term studying, staying in the library, doing this stuff, not to downplay, you do have to be smart. Okay. You do have to know your stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you spent your whole time doing that, how much communication skills did you get? How many experiences were you able to see or, have that could essentially help you in a scenario that happens in the clinic. It doesn't correlate a whole lot. Now there are some. I know a couple of my friends that are just complete geniuses that, they partied all the time, did whatever they wanted in college, and it didn't matter. Okay. There is that group. But for the general population, I don't think it relates. And so that's what happened. I mean, when I went through physical therapy school, the year I went through, I was trying to stay in state just because it was going to be cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Emory, North Georgia, and I want to say Mercer, they didn't even interview a physical therapist candidate that did not have a 4.0. They had so many applicants that had 4.0s that they said, all right, we'll take these 40 applicants and interview, and we'll pick our group out of this. When you've got people with 3.5s, 3.6, 3.7s that were just as capable as clinicians, if not more capable, that didn't even get a shot. They didn't even to get in front of somebody and see somebody see their charisma, somebody see their personal skills, their interpersonal skills. That's a huge component that is oftentimes overlooked.
Yeah, I can definitely agree there. I think that can be seen in everything. I mean, you got doctors that are stupid smart, triple board certified, this, that, and the other. Orthopedic surgeons come to mind, cardiovascular surgeons, but some of them, man, like, who you talking to? Not a colleague. You're talking to somebody that's not that deep in medicine. Chill out. Chill out. Well, cool. Well, this has been a hell of a conversation. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there anything else that you want to leave the people with? Anything about Apex, yourself, your practice, what you have coming up?
All I would say is that if you've had an experience with physical therapy in the past, okay, and you have a bad taste in your mouth because of it, you may have been for 3 different things, but you've been to some of the same type facilities. I urge you to, your next time that you have something come up, I urge you to try out cash-based physical therapy. It's blowing up. There's going to be somewhere close to you that can do it, and see the difference for yourself. Okay. There's going to be a bigger price tag than your insurance, but the benefits that you can get in terms of connection, in terms of one-on-one style treatment, almost like a concierge type service to you, it significantly outweighs what you're going to have at a traditional clinic. And I just urge people that haven't done that before, go out and just try it. Because I promise you, it is a completely different, it's almost a completely different just occupation. It'll be a completely different experience than you've ever had before. That's what I'll leave you guys with.
Cool. I love that. Okay. So where can the people find you? Where can they find Apex? What social media are you on? Where are you located? If they want to come in, what do they need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to come in or you want to schedule or just kind of talk and see about the pricing, just see about what kind of goes on, talk about your injury a little bit, give us a call. The phone number is 678-807-9675. You can also go to the website, apexptcumming.com, and check out our Instagram page. It's Apex Physical Therapy Cumming. Those are the 3 big kind of platforms I'm using right now. I have a Facebook page too, the same thing, Apex Physical Therapy Cumming. But you can either go on the website or give us a call, and we will figure out a time that's very quick, usually within 24 hours if we need to get you in and get you fixed up.
Cool. Well, Nathan, and hang on here when we stop recording, but I appreciate you coming out and speaking to me today. I think that this was a great time. We dove into some things. Definitely have to bring you back because I think there's some other threads maybe outside of Apex that we need to pull on that are for a different conversation. So I would love to have you back on 80/20. I'm sure the people have very much enjoyed it. So thank you again for coming. And dude, I look forward to your continued success and seeing what happens with Apex, man.
Sure, brother, dude. I really appreciate you bringing me on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So hang on for a second. We're going to end this and then we'll roll. Guys, remember, you can find this anywhere on YouTube. You can find this on all streaming sites. You can also find this in short form content, vertical on Instagram. We are also on LinkedIn, although I know none of you are ever on there anytime during the day. If you need anything from us, it's at 8020 _ and then literally 8020 EIGHTY 20 anywhere on social media. Very much appreciate y'all listening today, and we'll see you next week, man. Y'all be good. Peace.